The house that kept the score. By the time Evan realized the house was counting him, it was already too late to leave. He noticed it first with the doors. There were too many. The listing hadn't mentioned that. The real estate photos showed a modest two-story place tucked deep in the woods, an inheritance from a distant uncle he barely remembered. Cheap, isolated, and quiet. All the things Evan wanted after the divorce. The photos showed 4 interior doors on the first floor. There were 7. The extra 3 weren't obvious at first. They hid in angles your eyes slid past, one behind the staircase, one in the pantry that looked like shelving until you stared too long, one in the hallway that only appeared when the lights were off. Evan laughed it off the first night. Old houses were weird. Old houses settled. Old houses made sounds. This one breathed. At night, when the wind pressed against the trees, the walls exhaled slowly, like lungs emptying. The sound traveled through the floorboards and into his mattress. Not a creak, not a groan, a breath. Evan told himself it was the heating system. Then he remembered the house didn't have one. It had fireplaces, plural. Too many of those, too. The first fireplace was in the living room. Stone, blackened, normal enough. The second was in the kitchen, narrow and tall, with a flue too small to be useful. The third was upstairs in the guest bedroom, sealed shut with bricks that looked newer than the rest of the house. The fourth one was in the basement. That one still had ashes in it. The ashes were warm. Evan stood at the bottom of the stairs, flashlight shaking slightly in his hand, staring at the hearth. He hadn't lit a fire. He hadn't even been down there yet, but the ash glowed faintly, like the last memory of heat refusing to die. When he reached toward it, the glow dimmed, as if disappointed. That was the first time he felt watched. Not seen, watched. The sensation didn't come from one direction. It pressed from everywhere at once, like the air itself had eyes. He turned in a slow circle, flashlight cutting through dusty beams, and saw nothing. But something shifted. The shadows didn't move with him. They lagged behind, stretching longer than they should, pulling themselves into new shapes after he passed. One of them looked like a person standing just behind him. Evan spun around. Nothing. He left the basement lights on all night. The house did not like that. The next morning, every bulb on the first floor was shattered, not burned out, not loose, exploded. Glass littered the floors in perfect circles beneath each fixture, like they'd all decided to fail at the same moment. The breakers were fine, the wiring was intact, only the lights were gone. In their place, the house seemed darker than before. Not dim, dense, like the darkness had weight now. That was when Evan found the tally marks. They were carved into the wood above the kitchen doorway, thin, precise lines, grouped in 5s. Old, but not faded. The cuts were clean, deep, and deliberate. 23 marks. Evan stared at them for a long time, trying to remember if they'd been there before. He couldn't. His memory slid off the thought, refusing to settle. He took a knife from the drawer and scratched a line beside them. 24. The sound it made was wrong. The wood didn't scrape, it sighed. That night, the house spoke. Not with words, with noise shaped like language, a low murmur that came from inside the walls, weaving through the rooms like smoke. Evan lay in bed frozen as the sound crept closer. It stopped outside his door. Then the handle turned. Evan didn't breathe. He didn't blink. He watched as the door opened slowly, inch by inch, revealing only darkness beyond. No hallway, no walls, just black. The darkness leaned in, and then the door closed. In the morning, there were new tally marks. 25. Evan tried to leave. His car wouldn't start. The battery was dead, corroded as if it had been sitting unused for years. His phone had no signal. The landline crackled with static that almost sounded like whispering if he listened too closely. He packed a bag and started walking down the gravel road. The trees closed in. Not physically, not moving, but the distance stretched. What should have been a 10-minute walk turned into an hour, then 2. The road bent where it never had before, looping back on itself. Evan stood, panting, staring at the front of the house again. The porch light flicked on. The front door was open. Inside, the air felt warmer, thicker, like the house was pleased. The tally marks had multiplied. They were everywhere now. Door frames, stair risers, ceiling beams, even the furniture bore thin scratches along its edges. Hundreds, thousands, all counting, all waiting. Evan stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he dreamed of rooms that didn't exist, rooms stacked inside rooms, folding inward like a puzzle with no solution. He dreamed of people standing in corners, facing the walls, whispering numbers under their breath. He dreamed of himself among them. The mirrors stopped working. They still reflected the rooms, but not Evan. Where his body should have been was empty space, warped slightly like heat distortion. One night he heard footsteps upstairs, slow, careful, heavy. Evan grabbed a fireplace poker and climbed the stairs, heart hammering. The hallway was longer than it should have been. The walls stretched away from him, doors multiplying as he walked. Every door was open, every room was empty, except the last one. Inside, he saw a man standing by the window, tall, thin, wearing Evan's clothes. The man turned. It had Evan's face, but older, hollowed, eyes sunken deep into shadow. Its mouth was stitched shut with black thread that glistened wetly in the moonlight. It raised a hand. On its palm were tally marks, hundreds of them. Evan screamed. The lights went out. When they came back, the room was empty. There was a new door at the end of the hall. It hadn't been there before. The door led down. The staircase spiraled into darkness, deeper than the basement should allow. The walls were lined with names carved into the wood, thousands of them, overlapping, scratched out, rewritten. Evan recognized some. Neighbors from nearby towns, names from old mail stuffed into drawers, names he didn't know but felt heavy with meaning. At the bottom of the stairs was a room with no corners. The walls curved inward, pressing close. In the center stood a stone slab. On the slab lay a ledger. The pages were made of skin. Each page held a name and a number beside it. Most were crossed out. At the end of the book, only one name remained, Evans. The number beside it was still counting. The house trembled. The walls breathed faster now, shallow and eager. The tally marks began to scratch themselves deeper, lines carving over lines, the sound filling the room like 1,000 knives working at once. Evan understood then. The house wasn't haunted. It was hungry. And it fed on time, on years, on breaths, on moments stolen slowly, one tally at a time. Every door was a mouth, every room a stomach, and once the house began counting you, it never stopped. Evan tried to burn it. He dragged furniture into the living room fireplace, doused it in gasoline from the shed, and lit the match. The flames roared up, bright and furious. The house laughed. The fire went out instantly, smothered by darkness that poured from the walls like liquid. The ash glowed warmly, pleased. The tally marks carved themselves into Evan's arms that night, thin red lines, bloodless but deep. He watched in numb horror as they appeared one by one, counting something only the house understood. He felt himself shrinking, not physically, internally. Memories faded, years slipped away, his childhood vanished into nothing. The house was taking him, piece by piece. The final night was quiet. No breathing, no whispers, no footsteps, just silence. Evan sat at the kitchen table as the last tally mark carved above the doorway. He didn't resist when the door behind him opened. He didn't turn when the darkness reached for him. When the realtor showed the house to the next buyer weeks later, she smiled apologetically. "Old place," she said, "makes noises, has a lot of doors." The buyer laughed. The house exhaled. And somewhere deep inside, a new tally mark began to form.
No one in Merrow Creek could remember when the road first appeared. That should have been the warning. It wasn't on any map. It didn't show up on satellite images. GPS didn't acknowledge it. But if you drove far enough, past the old grain silos, past the last rotting farmhouse where the windows were nailed shut from the outside, you would eventually see it. A narrow stretch of asphalt splitting off from the highway at an angle that felt wrong. Not sharp enough to be intentional, not gentle enough to feel natural, like the road had hesitated before committing. There was no sign, no name, just black pavement disappearing into dense pine forest. People didn't talk about it openly, not because of superstition, but because conversation about it felt slippery, like trying to describe a dream that didn't want to be remembered. Words slid off, details changed. You'd start a sentence and forget how it was supposed to end. Still, everyone knew someone who had driven down it, and everyone knew they never came back the same. I learned about the road from my brother, Evan. He called me at 2:14 a.m. That alone was strange. Evan hated phone calls, said voices felt too close when they weren't attached to a body, texts only, emojis if he was feeling adventurous. When I answered, all I heard was breathing. Not panicked, not heavy, just slow, deliberate breaths, like he was counting them. "Evan?" I said. There was a pause. Then, "I found it." My stomach dropped. I hadn't asked what he meant, but I knew. "The road?" I whispered. Another pause, longer this time. "It wasn't there yesterday," he said. "I drive that route every day, every single day, and tonight it was just waiting." I sat up in bed. My room felt suddenly unfamiliar, like the walls had shifted when I wasn't looking. "Turn around," I said. "Just leave." "I did," Evan replied. His voice sounded distant now, like he was speaking through a long tunnel. "That's the problem." Something thudded softly in the background, a door closing or opening. I keep passing the same tree. It split down the middle, like lightning hit it, except the bark looks peeled, like something tried to crawl out. My mouth was dry. "Evan, listen to me. Pull over. Get out of the car." A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. "I already did." The line went dead. Evan didn't come home. The police did what they could, which was mostly shrugging in uniform. His car was found 3 days later on the shoulder of the highway, a mile before the grain silos. Engine cold, keys still in the ignition, driver's door wide open. There were no skid marks, no signs of a struggle. Just footprints leading away from the car. Bare footprints. They ended at the edge of the forest. I tried to tell them about the road, the unnamed road, the one that wasn't supposed to exist. They exchanged looks, the kind adults give when a child insists there's a monster under the bed. "Grief does strange things," one of them said gently, "especially between siblings." I wanted to hit him. Instead, I went looking for the road myself. It took 4 nights. 4 nights of driving the same route Evan had taken, same time, same weather, same gnawing sense that something was counting my mistakes. On the 5th night, it appeared. No fanfare, no shimmer in the air. It was just there, branching off the highway like it had always belonged. My headlights caught the edge of it, and for a split second I felt dizzy, like my depth perception had broken. The asphalt was darker than the highway, not just unlit, darker, as if it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. I stopped the car.
The forest beyond the road was silent. No insects, no wind. Pines stood shoulder to shoulder, their tops lost in blackness. I thought of Evan's voice, calm, measured, wrong. I turned onto the road. The air changed immediately. Not temperature, pressure. It felt like descending underwater without the water. My ears popped, my chest tightened. The headlights seemed weaker, the beams swallowed after only a few yards. I drove for what felt like 10 minutes. Then I passed the tree, split straight down the middle. The bark wasn't cracked, it was peeled back, curling outward, exposing pale wood that looked disturbingly like stretched skin. I slammed the brakes. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might knock my teeth loose. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no!" I threw the car into reverse. The engine revved. The car didn't move. I looked behind me. The road was gone. Not blocked, not curved out of sight. Gone. Behind my car was forest, dense, impenetrable, trees packed so tightly there wasn't room for the road to have ever existed. I screamed. The sound felt wrong leaving my mouth, like the air resisted it. The headlights flickered, and that's when I saw the footprints. Bare feet, appearing one by one in the beam of my lights, pressing into the asphalt, as if something invisible was walking towards me. I don't remember opening the car door. I remember standing outside it, though, remember the cold asphalt biting into my soles. The footprints stopped inches from my toes. The air in front of me rippled. Something shifted. I couldn't see it, but my body reacted anyway. Every instinct screamed predator. My muscles locked, not in preparation to fight, but in surrender. A pressure settled against my thoughts. Not a voice, not words, recognition. It knew me. Not my name, not my face. It knew my guilt. Images flooded my mind. Evan as a kid begging me to stay home instead of going out with friends. Evan sitting alone at family gatherings, hovering at the edges. Evan calling me last year, saying he thought something was wrong with him, and me replying with a joke because serious emotions made me uncomfortable. The pressure intensified. The thing leaned closer. I smelled damp earth, rot, old breath. And then, impossibly, I heard Evan's voice. "Don't answer it," he whispered. I dropped to my knees. From the darkness ahead, shapes began to emerge. People, dozens of them. They stood along the edges of the road, half hidden by trees. Some were naked, some wore scraps of clothing decades out of fashion. All were barefoot. All of them stared at me with hollow eyes. Their mouths opened in unison, and they spoke with Evan's voice. "Stay." I don't know how long I was there. Time didn't move right. My thoughts looped. Panic rose and fell without ever breaking. What snapped me out of it was pain. Sharp, sudden. I looked down. My feet were bleeding. The asphalt beneath me was no longer smooth. It had become rough, jagged, like thousands of tiny teeth pushing upward. The road was chewing. I stumbled back, screaming, crawling towards my car. The invisible thing lunged. For the first time, I felt it touch me. Its surface was cold and yielding, like wet clay shaped into something almost human. Almost. I swung blindly. My hand passed through it, but the pressure in my head shattered. The images stopped. The whispers cut off mid-breath. The thing recoiled. The figures along the road wailed. I scrambled into my car and slammed the door. The engine roared to life without me touching the key. The road reappeared behind me. I didn't look back. They found me at dawn. My car was parked on the shoulder of the highway, a mile before the grain silos. Bare footprints led from the forest to the driver's door. Mine. I tried to explain what happened, about the thing, about the people, about Evan. They nodded, took notes, gave me water.
They said shock does strange things. I stopped correcting them, because sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet and the world feels thin, I feel pressure behind my eyes, like something pressing its face against glass, waiting. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see a narrow road splitting off into the dark. It's closer now, and I know, with a certainty that makes my stomach twist, that it remembers me. Sleep well. It knows how to find roads that don't exist yet.
I moved into the house on Briar Row because it was cheap, and because I was tired of pretending that cheap things didn't come with reasons. The listing said quiet neighborhood, which is real estate code for no one will hear you scream, and recently renovated, which meant someone had tried very hard to make it forget what it used to be. New paint, new floors, new locks. Old houses don't like that. They notice when you try to erase them. The first night I slept there, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. with the overwhelming certainty that someone was standing in the hallway outside my bedroom. Not breathing, just standing. I stayed still. I didn't open my eyes. I waited for the sound that would prove I wasn't alone. A footstep, fabric shifting, anything human. Nothing came. After a while, I convinced myself it was just my brain misfiring in a new place. New smells, new creaks, new shadows. I rolled onto my side and went back to sleep. At 3:12 a.m. the next night, I woke up again. This time, I opened my eyes. The bedroom door was open. I was sure I had closed it. I always closed it. I had always closed doors since I was a kid, like if something bad wanted me, at least it would have to work for it. Beyond the doorway, the hall light was off. The hallway was darker than it should have been, like the darkness had weight, like it was stacked there. Something moved. Not fast, not slow, just enough to say, "I'm here." I sat up so suddenly my vision sparked. "Hello?" I said, already hating myself for it. Nothing answered. I turned on the lamp. The hallway was empty. The air felt colder, thick and sour, like old water. I got up, checked the house, locked the door again, and slept with the light on. I told myself it was stress. The third night, I didn't wake up on my own. Something woke me. A sound like fingers dragging lightly across drywall. It came from inside my bedroom. I froze. The sound moved slowly along the wall beside my bed, stopping just above my head. I could feel it more than hear it, a faint vibration through the studs, like something learning the shape of the room. I whispered, "Stop." The sound stopped. Then the mattress dipped, just slightly, as if someone had pressed a hand into it. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I lay there with my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest while the mattress dipped again, deeper this time, right beside my leg. Then I felt warmth. Breath. Not on my face, on my ankle. I kicked, hard. The lamp went flying. Light shattered the room. Nothing was there. The indentation in the mattress remained. It stayed for a full minute before slowly rising back into shape. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the kitchen floor until morning, with my back against the cabinets, watching the hallway. In daylight, the house looked harmless. Too harmless. Sunlight didn't reach the corners properly, but I told myself that was normal. Houses have shadows, houses make noise, houses settle. The neighbor across the street watched me when I went to get the mail. He was old in a way that suggested he had been old for a very long time. His eyes were cloudy, but focused, too focused. "You moved into the Calder place," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. He nodded once. "They painted it." "I guess." "They always paint it." I laughed, because that's what you do when someone says something unsettling and you don't want to encourage them. It's just a house. He stared at me for a long time. It doesn't like to be alone. That night, I barricaded my bedroom door with a chair. At 3:12 a.m., something began knocking. Soft at first, polite, knuckle on wood. I held my breath. The knocking grew louder, faster, not angry, insistent. "Open," a voice said. It sounded like my voice. My throat tightened. "Go away." Silence. Then, scratching, fast, frantic, like nails tearing at the doorframe. The chair slid an inch across the floor. "Open," the voice said again, closer now, wrong in ways I couldn't explain. I screamed and ran. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't grab my keys. I just ran out of the house barefoot and didn't stop until I hit the end of the block. When I turned back, the house was dark and quiet, peaceful, like nothing had happened. I slept in my car that night. The next morning, the front door was open. Inside, the walls were scratched. Not vandalized, not random. Words. Hundreds of them, carved deep into the paint and plaster. "Stay. Don't leave. We were alone." In the hallway, in my handwriting, carved so deep it exposed the studs beneath the wall, was a sentence that made my stomach drop. "You said you would stay." I called the police. They walked through the house, exchanged looks, wrote things down. One of them asked if I'd ever had a sleepwalking problem. "No," I said. They told me there was no sign of forced entry, no fingerprints except mine, no evidence of another person. I packed a bag and told myself I was done. Lease be damned. I would lose the money, I would lose the furniture, I would lose anything if it meant getting away. As I was leaving, I heard the neighbor across the street call my name. "You can't leave it empty," he said. "I don't care," I said. He shook his head slowly. "It remembers what emptiness feels like." That night, in my sister's guest room, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. The door was open. The hallway beyond was darker than it should have been. Something moved. I moved again, farther. Hotels, friends, a different city. It followed. Always at 3:12. Always closer. Mirrors started showing reflections that lagged behind my movements. Photos on my phone changed while I slept. Videos recorded themselves. Audio of me whispering things I didn't remember saying. "I'm lonely. I'll be good. Don't make me be empty again." I stopped sleeping. I stopped trusting my senses. I taped my doors shut. I covered mirrors. I kept lights on. One night, exhausted, shaking, I heard it speak without hiding. "I was full once," it said, from everywhere at once, from the walls, from the floor, from inside my chest. Images flooded my mind. Families rotting in place, children bricked into walls, adults lying down and never getting back up, bones becoming part of the structure, the house growing around them, learning them. "When they left," it said, "I was empty. Empty hurts." I cried, I begged, I promised anything. It was quiet for 3 nights. On the 4th night, I woke up in my old bedroom. The house smelled like fresh paint. The door was closed. The walls were smooth. I screamed until my throat bled. No one heard. At 3:12 a.m., the house settled around me. Warm, content. I'm writing this on the inside of a wall. If you're hearing this, if you're watching this, if you're thinking about moving into a cheap, quiet house that's been recently renovated, listen carefully. It doesn't like to be alone, and it already knows your name.